Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I am not only hosting this, I am the Senior Civil Rights Specialist here and in CREO, and I have 15 years of housing experience. I specialize in low income housing for individuals with mental and physical disabilities, as well as senior citizens. We are here at City Hall on the 4th floor here in the CREO department. We are here to introduce, roll out, welcome you to the introduction of the Ordinance 231019, which in other words is the Source of Income Anti-Discrimination Law. So we are here with a few guests. We're here to talk about some details, go over some new ideas, and also introduce the different points of view that we have going on here. Hello there.
Good morning.
Councilman Duncan is here. He is representative of the 6th District of Kansas City. He also is an amazing advocate when it comes to veterans' rights, when it comes to community organization, and also when it comes to housing advocacy.
Good morning.
Good
Thank you for having me.
So I want to know exactly what you're feeling, what's going on as this rollout is about to happen on August 1st. Tell me kind of your background in this, your motivation for this. Kind of give me the whole spiel.
Yeah, well, good morning. No, I am incredibly excited about this. I'm a leader and organizer with KC Tenants. It's a citywide tenant union. And I'm a firm believer that the best policy is informed by the lived experience by the people who are closest to the problem. And so we're crafting policy solutions, especially when we're talking about this solution. We talked to tenants.
Mm-hmm.
We worked with tenants. We worked with tenants like Alicia, a single mother of 2. We worked with Jewel, also a victim of income discrimination. We worked with Nadra. And their testimony, their lived experience informed this policy. And so I'm about a year on city council now, and I will say one of the biggest things that I've learned is that passing the policy is great, and that's also the easiest part.
Mm-hmm.
And so the implementation is where the rubber meets the road. How do we ensure that when we implement a policy with the best intentions, that it actually is effective, that we can actually implement it to ensure that it does and provides the meaningful change to the people who we're trying to help. And so I'm excited because this policy was informed by people who've been victims of income discrimination when they're looking for rental housing.
I'm excited to see the interdepartment cooperation for this, because I feel, this is just me, if we're having a government that is going to be working for people, it needs to be working for all people.
That's right.
And we need to all be working together to make sure that it is actually working. So I appreciate that. And speaking of, I wanted to ask you about the process. You spoke a bit about how you spoke to different people in the community. You spoke to folks that have experienced this. You spoke to folks whose lives have been impacted and the children's lives have been impacted by this. So you as a councilman, now for those of us that are just regular folks that, just go to work every day, try to figure out how life goes, explain to me how this process went from an idea to an actual law. So kind of walk me through how that went from, one space, and now here we are sitting here talking about it.
Yeah, so we talk about in tenant organizing and organizing in general. We say the people's vision, right, is our North Star, right? What is your lived experience today? And in a perfect world, where would you be? And for many people trying to live their day-to-day life, it's just to be housed, right? To have a roof over your head. So talking to people who've been victims of this discrimination, and then looking at peer cities. We join now 120 other cities to provide this level of discrimination protection. So we're not recreating the wheel here. And then talking with those folks, informing this policy, sitting down with the mayor's office and my colleagues, the legal team, to say, how do we actually make this work? Every state's different, and when we are thinking about passing laws at the city level here in the city of Kansas City, Missouri, we also have to think about the State House in Jefferson City and what they've done to tie our hands and prevent us from doing things we want to do to govern ourselves. So that self-determination portion and what we can actually do is important to make sure that we have a meaningful policy and not just a headline. From there, then we started doing public engagement, right? We didn't just speak to tenants, we spoke to landlords too, to say, how is this going to be effective? How would you implement this? What are going to be your limitations?
Mm-hmm.
We talked with landlords. We talked with the housing authority. We talked with all the other different departments when we talked about that interdepartment cooperation. We talked with our CREO department, our housing department, our health department, and how would we actually make this work? And then we had the negotiations with my colleagues to get to a policy that everybody could vote on, because there are 13 voting members on the city council. We have to have at least 7 to pass a policy. So then we went to the bargaining table to see what we could actually get
the
passed.
bargaining table.
That's right.
So we have a lot of back and forth. We have public engagement. You go back and forth with your colleagues in the council, and then now here we are.
Now here we are.
I'm excited about this. I think that this is something that, as being a part of CREO, it's something that we can really, sink our teeth into, to make sure that everyone that is attempting to just get the roof over their head and keep the roof over their head, that everyone understands their rights, and we can advocate for as many people as possible.
I am so thankful for this webinar, the work of you, everyone in the team here, which you all can't see, which there is many people here. The production is incredible. And we have the health department here. We have the CREO department here. The housing department will play a role in this. And it is those people who will be doing the day in the day and out work to ensure that this policy provides meaningful change to tenants.
That was Councilman Jonathan Duncan, again, representing the 6th District. He is one of the strong voices when it comes to our housing advocacy and tenants' rights. So thanks again for him being available. This is Director Jaime Guillen, and good morning, hello. He is here to give us just a brief overview of his role in the rollout of the source of income discrimination law that's coming into effect. Take it away.
Yes, well, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody that joined us this morning. I'm Jaime Guillen. I'm the director of the Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity Department. This is one of the biggest initiatives that we're taking on at the moment. August 1st, ordinance establishes that we begin to enforce our source of income discrimination ordinance. And we have assembled a team. This is part of our rollout. Included with that is we'll be doing investigations, but also we want to do education and awareness for landlords. We want to make sure that everybody is compliant, but we also want to advocate for the tenants. We want them to make sure that they know that we are here for them. If there's any issues or problems, we can advocate for them. We will conduct investigations to move forward and hopefully reduce something that's out there now where people are not allowed into housing due to their source of income.
So basically, we're here to make sure that tenants that are experiencing source of income discrimination, which is kind of a new concept because it's not something that is not something that's protected by the state, not something that's protected by the federal government, but this is something that Kansas City, Missouri, we have decided is something that is important to pretty much here in CREO, that is. We're pretty much here to make sure that that particular aspect of source of income is something that the public understands, and then also something that landlords also are able to understand and get on board with, right?
Absolutely. We have come up with extensive literature. I know that we were going to keep doing ongoing education campaigns because we really want everybody to be out there and, be aware of the new ordinance. Make sure that, like I said, tenants are aware that we're here and able to advocate for them.
How are you interacting with other directors? Because as Councilman Duncan mentioned, this is going to take a group effort.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just going to be CREO. It's not just going to be civil rights. It's not just going to be housing. It's going to be a little bit of everybody. How are you working with the other directors in the city to ensure that this law is supported by as many hands as can be?
So that's a great question. And everything, I've always been one to say it's a team effort. So collaboration is key for everything. When I recently joined the city, I've been here less than a year, and one of the first things I want to do is create those bridges with other departments, not only for this initiative, but everything else that we do. So reaching out, having meetings, creating that open dialogue. We've had a lot of support from our administration. I've been open to hearing feedback from other directors, as well as providing feedback to how do we work together to accomplish the goals of not only our departments, but as a city as a whole, as we serve our residents.
Mm-hmm. Let me also add something real quick. This is an interactive webinar, y'all. So if there are any questions that you have, if you have questions for Councilman Duncan, if you have questions for the director, I also live in the tenant advocacy space. And now that I'm here with the city of Kansas City, I am excited to stand in the gap between both of those worlds so we can find some common ground and be able to advocate for all citizens of this lovely city. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And of course, if we're not able to get to everything, then we will definitely put up our contact information, our website. Let's also take a minute to push our new app, the KCMO app.
Yeah, my KCMO app. So basically, what you can do there is it's kind of like a 311. You're able to submit all kinds of things from potholes. Definitely, you'll be able to use it for our new initiative here, Source of Income. That routes to us. We will contact you, and it begins the process. So it's the easiest way to do it. But not only that, I mean, you can always come and do walk-ins. You can call us. You can pretty much, we're making ourselves available for any way to interact with the public.
Fantastic, fantastic. My KCMO app, everybody, you can download that in your Apple Store, your Google Play Store, whatever other stores that are, we will be there. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Dan O'Connor. Dan O'Connor is the Senior Civil Rights Lead Investigator. Is that all the words in the title? Okay,
yes, so I've got a Juris Doctorate and a lot of experience running investigations, but this is doing housing policy is new to me, so I'm so glad to be here.
We're excited to have you. We're excited to talk about this. So Dan here is the man when it comes to make it to where people like you and me can understand a little bit better as we're trying to make sure that we're in compliance, educated, and also being able to advocate for everyone in the city. So welcome, Mr. Dan O'Connor.
The important thing about this law is that this new law requires that tenants and prospective tenants be treated equally when they are applying for housing, and they, without regard to whether they intend to pay their rent using earned wages or other sources of income. Now, sources of income is defined quite broadly as any lawful and verifiable income. So that's going to be a lot of things. That's going to be housing choice, Section 8 vouchers, disability benefits, Social Security benefits, child support. It really can be anything. Now, notably, this law does not actually mandate that private property owners actually accept any particular type of income to pay rent. It merely requires that they be given equal consideration as other types of rent.
So wait a minute. So you're saying that if a person comes to apply for a house or an apartment somewhere, we're saying that in the city of Kansas City, no matter what type of income that you have, as long as it's legal, well, no matter what type of income that you have, that a landlord has to consider that income when it comes to being able to pay their rent for that 12-month lease, right?
Exactly. They have to give you equal consideration. And this law also has some provisions for other characteristics that are also associated with housing instability. These are credit history, criminal background, or prior evictions. And again, the law does not actually mandate that any of these characteristics be accepted as a tenant. It really only requires that they be considered. I think of it like this. If a tenant knocks on a landlord's door and hands them a rental application, if the landlord just glances at it and sees, oh, you've got a prior eviction or you're paying with Section 8 vouchers or whatever, if they only look at one of those and slam the door in their face, that's probably going to be a violation of this law. But if they crack the door open and ask a few more questions and learn more about this person, that's probably going to be okay. Now, they don't ultimately need to accept the tenant in all situations. There's some folks with backgrounds that are just not going to be good tenants for certain landlords, and they're not required to accept those. They only have to give them a consideration.
So if a person comes, they're considered, we're looking at the person not just for what's on the paper necessarily, but looking at the whole picture of who this applicant is, right?
Exactly.
So
just
giving
consider
the
them as a
people
whole person.
A whole person. So those things happen. things happen. Sometimes bad choices happen in a person's credit history. And sometimes we're able to, look at some different circumstances that might make a difference on whether or not that person's going to be a good tenant or not.
Exactly. Give them an opportunity to turn a new leaf.
I see. So tell me a little bit more about how this process is going to go for tenants or landlords.
Source of income is not prohibited by state or federal law. This is prohibited by the municipal code only. So this law will be enforced by the Kansas City Department of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity. And City Hall has approved additional funding for the enforcement of this law. So CREO is hiring more investigators and staff to process these complaints. It's a complaint-driven process. So if someone thinks that they were discriminated against, they need to file a complaint of discrimination. Now, we are going to be finding other ways to find potential violations. We're going to be doing audits and systemic investigations. We can seek information and start a case with any information we find in the community. But mostly, folks should file a complaint. After we receive a complaint of discrimination, CREO staff will review it and determine whether or not it's jurisdictional, whether or not it appears that the law could have been violated. If it does, we'll generate a charge and serve that on the respondent, the housing provider, and give them an opportunity to provide an answer to the charge and any information that they think we should consider in determining whether or not the law was violated.
So this is the process. So if someone says, hey, I've been discriminated against concerning my source of income, that means that this would trigger the beginning of an investigation.
Exactly.
For us.
Exactly. And that investigation can include a lot of other things. We can conduct interviews, we can do document requests, we can serve interrogatories, we can do site visits. The investigator can do basically anything that's necessary to get enough information to determine whether or not the law was violated.
So we're trying to gather information from both sides.
Exactly, both sides. CREO is a neutral third party. We're not on the landlord side, we're not on the tenant side. We just need to find out what happened and find out if the law was broken.
Okay.
So once enough information is gathered, the investigator will issue a determination of probable cause or no probable cause, determining whether or not there was a violation. If there is, if there is a determination of probable cause, there could be a number of consequences, but that can be a very lengthy process. Our average processing time for other types of discrimination complaints can be around a year.
I was just about to say, when I hear investigation, that sounds like a long time.
Yeah, and that can create all sorts of problems in the context of a housing complaint. We don't want the Section 8 voucher holder to, have their voucher expire. We don't want the property sitting unused for too long. We want to prioritize processing these complaints as quickly as we possibly can. And we've set a very aggressive goal of completing these investigations within 30 days of completing the investigation. Now, towards that end, we're going to be promoting mediation. Mediation can be a very cost-effective and efficient way to resolve a dispute, but it's voluntary. We can't force the parties to engage in it, so we're going to do our best to meet that 30-day goal.
So from start to finish, person comes in, they say, hey, I've been discriminated against due to my source of income. We look at the case, we take a look, we make sure that there actually is something that we can take. It's within our jurisdiction. It is the source of income discrimination. And we look at that, we start our interview process, we ask the questions, perhaps we go out to the site if need be. We gather the information from both sides, and then we say, hey, let's get together and have a mediation between the tenant and the landlord and see if we can find some common ground here.
Exactly.
And we're trying to get all of that done in 30 days.
Which can be difficult to do.
I know that based on the law that we have, based on what's actually been crafted and the staff that we have here, I feel like we can actually get this done. It's important that we get it done quickly. And since that's one of our main priorities, getting it done fairly, getting it done correctly, and also getting it done quickly, I think that we'll be on the right track for that.
We're certainly going to do our best. Now, there are some other provisions in this law that I want to talk about. Housing providers are still permitted to require proof of adequate income. This is still a market rate rent. They just have to consider all sources of income when determining if the tenant is eligible. And they can still set reasonable rent to income ratios. In the context of housing choice vouchers, they just need to apply the rent to income ratio to the portion of the rent not covered by the value of the voucher. Also, landlords can still conduct credit, eviction, and criminal history checks. They just can't use any one of those as the only reason.
If they don't have the income to rent that property at the rent that that has been stated, then they just won't qualify.
Right.
So we're
The
not
tenant
letting
still
every
needs to be
single
able to meet all the needs of the tenant.
The tenant must be qualified. Okay, that helps a lot for a lot of landlords that are, trying to wade through this law and make sure that they are able to run their businesses and make sure they're able to be able to provide fair housing to everyone. So.
Absolutely, that's the bottom line. But there are a few other small provisions in this law that we
Sure.
should discuss. When a landlord denies a rental application, the tenant needs to be notified of the denial. No just ignoring applications. And if the tenant requests a rationale for the denial, they must be provided one in writing, which should include their rights to be free from discrimination. Also, landlords will start being required to give tenants or prospective tenants, really at the time that they receive the application, a notice that CREO will be providing on our website, notifying the tenant of their right to be free from discrimination. And also, as usual, a landlord may not increase charges, reduce services, or otherwise retaliate against a tenant that complains about discrimination. There are some limitations to coverage for this law. This is a municipal law, so it only applies to rental properties located within the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And also, there's an exemption for smaller properties that are owner-occupied. That's 4 or fewer units.
So if a person is living in a fourplex, and I am a landlord and I'm living in the top unit and I'm renting out the other 3 units that is in the fourplex that I live in, this law does not apply to me.
That's correct.
Okay. And if I'm a landlord, let's say for instance, I'm a landlord, but I live in Bonner Springs, but my properties that I rent are located in Kansas City, this law does apply.
That's correct.
Alrighty. Okay. Clarification. That's what we need. Okay.
Now, we have some suggestions for best practices for landlords. Of course, we are not your attorneys, but we have some suggestions that landlords might want to start following to best comply with these provisions. Now, the bottom line is to consider applications on a case-to-case basis rather than considering only one of these protected characteristics. Just consider the whole thing. And a good idea is to invite applicants to provide additional information for the landlord to consider. The landlord is going to want to avoid advertisements that have, absolute limitations, something like no Section 8 or no felons, anything like that is going to look an awful lot like they're not considering the whole town. A landlord might want to consider becoming prepared to accept housing choice vouchers. If they haven't been previously doing this, the process may not be as hard as they imagine, but they might want to start taking some steps to get prepared for that. If a landlord is concerned what they do to accept housing choice vouchers, they'll want to speak to the Housing Authority of Kansas City.
That information, if you need any more information, the various housing authorities that are in the metropolitan area can provide the details of how their Section 8 onboarding process goes. Our housing authorities are excited and ready to support you in this process. Thank you so much, Mr. Dan O'Connor, for your time. I appreciate this. If you have any other questions, please contact the CREO department. I have here Mr. Nasser Johari. He's in the health department. When I think to myself, health department, I think vaccinations, I think shots, I don't think housing. So I'm excited to have you here because every hand is going to be needed in the implementation of the Source of Income Ordinance. And we're excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to get to know your role in the Source of Income Ordinance. What does the health department stand and how are they helping out with this process?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. The health department, we do have an existing healthy homes program, and we do inspect and regulate rental properties. For this ordinance specifically, our role will be the enforcement of this ordinance. And once we receive a notification from the director of CREO that there are a violation to this specific part of the ordinance, we will act immediately and we will take enforcement action, and that will be pertaining the permit and suspending the permit of the rental units or rental property.
So the director of CREO notifies the health department.
Correct.
The health department looks into the situation of a non-compliant landlord, and they say, okay, well, what's going to be happening here? When it comes to enforcement, your role would be then to suspend the rental license for a non-compliant landlord after we've done all of the investigating, all of the things. After all that process is done, when it comes down to if somebody is just not compliant, your role is then to suspend that license for their
Correct.
ability to rent rent their property.
That is correct. That is correct. The investigation part, once it gets to discrimination, usually, based on this ordinance, it's done by the CREO office. And we, once the CREO office decide, based on their investigation, that there is violation to the ordinance, they notify the director of health, and we take action and suspend the permit.
So when it comes to housing, when it comes to the health department's relationship with housing, what do you feel is something that Healthy Homes has been doing for the past, how long has Healthy Homes been in effect?
6 years. By
6 years.
August, 6 years.
Fantastic. So what has been Healthy Homes' role, I would say, in the housing world of Kansas City?
Well, it's been a good 6 years, I would say, for the program. We have so far in Kansas City, we have close to 94,000 rental units registered with the program. The ordinance itself, or the Healthy Homes, it's a complaint driven. So far, just in the quick numbers, in the past 6 years, we received close to 12,000 complaints. The program, it's a complaint-based program, so we respond to complaints from tenants and landlords. So we responded to 12,000 complaints, and we managed to fix, with the landlord and with the tenant, we managed to fix close to 25,000 violations. So if you look at the overall housing of the city, we do have an older housing stock in the city. And with that enforcement, with that little regulation, the housing, the condition of the housing will continue to deteriorate. So that's one of our main things. We want to make sure that we have a stable housing. We want to make sure that we do have control over some of these properties. That landlord will just not do any type of corrective action and not fixing to these properties.
So basically, you're there to make sure that in the case of those few landlords that are just not getting it together when it comes to maintaining their properties, for the most part, landlords are on board with making sure that the places that they rent are safe and in compliance and are wonderful to rent to the tenants of Kansas City. But for those that aren't, Healthy Homes is available to make sure that repairs are being made in a timely fashion, making sure that the tenants are being heard without fear of retaliation.
Yes, that is very accurate. That is very accurate. And actually, in the current ordinance, we do have, especially once we get to the retaliation, we have a clear statement. We have a clear section with zero tolerance for retaliation. As I stated, every landlord is required to register their unit with the city. You have to have that permit through the health department to be able to rent your rental units. And that's where we come in as an enforcement department to make sure that everyone is in compliance with all city rules and regulations.
So when it comes to the relationship between the health department and CREO, you spoke earlier of the enforcement aspect and your role being that the license would be taken away if someone were to be found, after a lot of investigating, someone were to be found to not be in compliance. What is the path back for a landlord that has been found to be non-compliant? They've lost their license. Of course, the main thing here is the whole point of this is to provide housing. Correct. So if we're wanting to provide housing, there has to be a path back for landlords after they've been found to be non-compliant. What's that path back look like when it comes to the health department?
For health-related violations, usually we do have a probationary period where we put the landlord on a probationary period with a corrective action plan. For this specific ordinance for the civil rights and discrimination, usually the director of CREO will create a special probation for the landlord, and we'll go through the process with the landlord to make sure that the violation is abated. And once we receive the notification from the director of CREO that this violation is abated, we will reinstate the permit.
I see. So this is another example of city working together.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, this is another example of city working together.
Absolutely.
So when a landlord is not compliant, we are working to investigate the situation. We're then working on bringing that person back into compliance so that they can continue to provide fair and safe housing for individuals.
Yeah, exactly. So after the finding of a probable cause, after we find that a landlord has violated these anti-discrimination provisions, there will be a number of steps and penalties. And if they're a repeat offender, they will be placed in special probationary status. So this isn't your first time that you get here. But after a landlord is on special probationary status, we'll work with them to create an action plan to bring them back into compliance, and we'll do inspections to make sure that they are, no longer discriminating. And once they are, we'll recommend to help that they be removed from that status.
Okay. We have a question from the chat. All right. I love this participation. Thanks. This one is going to be for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
How does a new landlord register with Healthy Homes?
We do have our application online. It's basically they have to fill a simple application. They can either submit online or they can call our office. We can. We have staff available to assist at all times. The registration process, I would say it's very simple. We just need some information about the property. There'll be a registration fee that's $20, and there's an annual fee to register the property. It's another $20. So, as I mentioned, it's a very simple process. Application is available online. They can call our office at 513-6464. We're always available. We'll fax the application, and they can walk into the health department 2400 Truce, pick up the application. We'll assist them with filling the application and get their property registered.
So your office is at the health department at 2400 Truce.
Correct.
And we will be placing the website and phone number and all the information to make sure that everyone that wants to be able to be a new and excited landlord here in Kansas City, that they'll be able to register, bring your $20 bill and get yourself registered so that you'll be able to provide housing for our city. That interdepartment connection that we're establishing here, to where we are able to work together to make sure that this is something that is something that's helpful for all citizens of this city. Being able to see the objectives of CREO, being able to see the objectives of the health department, providing a basic need and the rights concerning our basic needs of housing. I'm very excited to see what this is going to turn into, and what this is going to be looking like over these next few months and years as we roll this out August 1st. Well, thank you both. Thank you so much. Of course, if there is anything else, first of all, that MyKC app. Download the MyKC app. This allows you to do a lot of things, a myriad of things. You can contact the health department. You can contact CREO. You can contact every other department that needs to that is going to be able to serve your needs. Our city website, kcmo.gov / a whole bunch of things. If you click through and find us, find the health department, find whatever it is that you're needing, we are here to serve you.
And I do want to emphasize that CREO does not want to be issuing penalties or fines against landlords unless absolutely necessary. We want housing stock rented as quickly as possible. We want tenants in safe, affordable housing as quickly as possible. But if and towards that end, we are promoting education. We want to reach out and answer any questions that landlords might have on how they can come into compliance with these simple new provisions. And if a tenant believes that they experience discrimination, they should file a complaint with the CREO department using the MyKCMO app. You can call 311. You can go to our website, kcmo.gov, or you can call us directly. CREO is hiring currently. If you're interested in being an investigator or a civil rights specialist, we are accepting applications at this time.
Thank you for everyone for joining us today. We had great guests. Awesome job. I'd like to thank the team, the entire CREO team, our civil rights division, our SOI team, and everybody who joined us today. Again, this ordinance really, like Dan said, is to help us provide residents and with housing to keep the housing stock up, to help people stay in homes, get in homes, and remove some of those barriers that exist out there. So we don't want to use this as a punitive measure. We want to allow everybody to have an equal playing field.
Will there be any follow-up to this webinar? The answer is yes. We will be having on our website, we will actually be showing this webinar again with some extra resources and some post-production things that we'll be able to support a lot of. and provide a little follow-up information for some of the things that we talked about here today. We want to encourage you to communicate with your council. We want you to communicate with us. We want you to communicate with your neighbors. We want you to communicate with your community. We are working hard to represent every walk of life. And we are excited to see that CREO is growing. We are hiring more staff.
Yep, we are adding to our civil rights division.
Check us out on our website. There are things that are going to be happening, including follow-ups to this webinar. We will be having more information coming out, more educational moments here as well, to be able to push as much information out there. We don't want anyone to feel as if we're leaving anybody hanging. We want to make sure that we are supporting everyone through this entire process. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for joining
you.
us.
Till next time.